I'm going to talk a little bit about Stevie Ray Vaughan's effects. What effects Stevie Ray Vaughan used? And I'm going to tell you right now, Stevie didn't use a lot of effects. You know, he was not a guy that relied on effects for his sound, which is the case of most blues players. Like most blues players had a guitar and an amp, and that was it. So when you hear their sound, they're not, using, a pedal board full of effects. You know what I'm saying? They're using an amp and a cord. That's it. I mean, there's not a lot in terms of effects there. And also, when you think about blues playing, it came up in an era where, there weren't a lot of pedal effects around. You know, Jimi Hendrix kind of popularized, the use of these outward effects pedals to get a sound, and it went from there. But Stevie didn't use a lot of effects. He did not. So, when you're trying to get a Stevie Ray pedal board together, it's pretty easy. There's not a lot to it. Now on the song Cold Shot, he used, supposedly in the studio, he used a vibratone for the song. Now on tour, he used a Leslie. Okay. He used a Leslie speaker cabinet for Cold Shot, but that's not an effect. See, that's not even an effect. That's an actual piece of equipment. Now, are you going to haul around a Leslie cabinet? I mean, if you've ever hauled one, if you've ever been around one, it's a beast. It's big. So chances of you, me, or somebody else, hauling a Leslie are pretty low. So you would probably get a pedal board with some sort of Leslie or rotating speaker effect in it that was not in Stevie's arsenal. That's why I'm telling you this, because this is one that you might want to get that he didn't have, because he had the actual piece of equipment. So you're not going to have a Leslie speaker, more than likely. You could if you want to, but you're more than likely not going to have a rotating speaker cabinet. So you get an effect on the floor to imitate that. This is a pretty good series right here called 23 Pedals, that Leslie sound. Getting that, these guys called PJ and the Beard, and they go through a whole bunch of rotating speaker effects. So you're going to want a rotating speaker effect. And once again, I'm saying this because Stevie didn't have one of these. Okay, he had the actual rotating speaker. That was one of his quote unquote effects, but it was a piece of equipment. Okay, it wasn't an effect. It was a piece of equipment. Okay. Now, as far as his actual pedals go, I mean, this is a picture of his actual board right here. This is a picture of what was on the ground in front of Stevie Ray Vaughan. And these two right here are switches. They're not even pedals. They don't do anything except switch something off and on. This was his amp switcher. Just went from like his Dumble to his Marshall, or his, just from amp to amp. Could also, hook up multiple amps with this pedal. So he's got an input, then he's got multiple pedals going out, or multiple amps going out. This was probably a reverb switch or an on and off switch for an amplifier, or a switcher from one amp to another. This is just a switch. And what they're switching between is not really important, because they're not an effect. It's just a switch. So if you're looking at his pedal board, just count these out, because it's a switch. It's not an effect. His effects were a tube screamer, and a wah-wah. That's it. I mean, really, like that's it. Like I said, Stevie didn't rely on effects. He used the box wah-wah mostly for Voodoo Child. And there was a song he did on Soul to Soul on a record, yeah, Soul to Soul, where I think the song Soul to Soul, he plays the wah-wah, Soul to Soul, wow, wow, and he's working the wah-wah. And supposedly in the studio, I think he had two wah-wahs on that, but live he only played one. And he liked the box wah-wah. I mean, get any wah-wah that you want, that you like. If you want to get a Vox wah-wah because you think it's the best, get it. There's tons of wah-wahs. There's people custom making wah-wahs. There's been wah-wah pedals produced. There's a Boomerang, a Maestro Boomerang. It's a great wah-wah. Crybaby wah-wah is a great wah-wah. Morley makes just specifically a wah-wah pedal. I mean, just get one that you like. But yeah, Stevie used a Vox, probably a vintage Vox. This may be called a Clyde. This may not be, but it's a vintage Vox pedal. He liked it. In terms of his tube screamer, he used his tube screamer mainly for boost. Because Stevie didn't play with a lot of distortion. He didn't play with a lot of overdrive. He played with an amp sound that was kind of complemented with the tube screamer. The tube screamer just gave him the boost. The thing is, when you're playing in a three-piece band, which Stevie did for a long time, when you go to play a solo in a three-piece band, you have to have a boost pedal to bring you up. Jimi Hendrix, same thing. You have to have a boost pedal to bring you up in that solo, because when you transfer from playing a chord or chords or, low ended on your guitar to up here to the high end, you lose a lot of tonality. You lose a lot of thickness. You lose a lot of bigness. So if you don't boost your sound and you go up to these higher notes, your sound's going to fall off. So your solo is going to, you're playing your rhythm level here and your solo starts, and all of a sudden your solo's down here in terms of volume. So your volume's up here during your your rhythm playing, and then when you go over your solo, your volume goes down because you're changing where you're playing on the guitar. And you could go from playing chords to playing single notes. And when you play a solo, you don't want it to go down in intensity. When you start playing your guitar solo, you want to go up in intensity. Like, hey, check this out. And Stevie did that. Stevie went up in intensity when he played his guitar solos. His guitar solos, he's playing and he's singing, and he starts playing guitar, and it's like, okay, here it is. You can't let the guitar drop when you play a solo. So you want to boost. And because Stevie used the guitar and the amp to get his sound, when he boosted his sound, he didn't want a bunch of the pedal sound. He didn't want the pedal sound to overtake his tone that he was creating with his guitar and his amp. Some of these distortion pedals, some of these overdrive pedals, the circuit itself changes your tone. Okay. You want to stay away from those. You want to stay away from those when going for a Stevie Ray Vaughan sound, because Stevie just wanted his sound boosted. He didn't want his sound altered and boosted. He wanted to just boost it. And the TS Tube Screamer does that well. He started off with a vintage TS 808. He went to a TS 9. Then he went to a TS 10. So the main important part is that it's just a boost pedal. Doesn't color his tone. he would set it with mostly the volume cranked up on the pedal and the distortion or the overdrive turned way down. So let's say your volume's on, 8 or 9, maybe even 10, and then your distortion is on 2. You don't want a lot of the pedal he didn't use a lot of the pedal in his sound. He used the pedal as a boost for his sound. So think of it, the TS, the Tube Screamer as a volume boost. See how it says input, see how it says drive and then level? His level would be up real high and the drive would be down real low. And then the tone is just, however you want it. If you want more, if your guitar, you want it to scream a little bit more treble, you turn the tone up. If you want it down. So that's going to vary depending upon your room. So there was no, set tone level I think he had. I think this varied according to the room or the amp. So if he was using a Marshall, maybe down here. If he was using his Fenders more, maybe up here. So, the most important part is that your drive on the pedal is going to be low and your output is going to be high, because when you hit your solo, you hit this pedal and it boosts your sound a little bit. And it may give you a little bit more sizzle. That's all you need. Wasn't a lot. And like I said, he started off with the 808, which is the version before this, went to a TS9. He also used a TS10. And I've heard him say, yeah, I'm using a TS 10 right now, or TS9, I can't remember. I'm using, or the Tube Screamer. I'm using the Tube Screamer because it's the best I've found so far. So Stevie's been gone for a long time. So you can imagine how many of these pedals like this have been made. So you don't have to get a Tube Screamer. I prefer the Green Rhino to the Tube Screamer. I love the Green Rhino. I love the sound of a Green Rhino. And there are multiple. Maxon makes a Tube Screamer. There's TC Electron. There's tons. I mean, there are literally tons of people that make these pedals, overdrive pedals. They're overdrive pedals, but you want to use it for a boost, and you want it so it doesn't really affect your tone. Okay. You don't want your tone change. When you hit this pedal, you don't want your tone to change almost at all. You just want it boosted. So keep that in mind when you're trying to get a Stevie Ray Vaughan effect, that you want your overdrive pedal to just boost your sound, just bring the level up. You don't want it to color your sound. Now, Stevie had a here's the wah-wah. Vox 846. It's a Vox wah-wah. It's a vintage Vox. There's a lot of people that get into wah-wahs. There's capacitors in them and this and that. It's a personal preference, really, but see, the main thing I'm trying to get at here is the effects were not part of Stevie's sound. Like, his sound, his overall sound did not come from his effects. If you look at the band U2, the guitar player, The Edge, all of his sound come from effects. So if you were trying to imitate The Edge, you would have to have a massive pedal board, because all of his sounds come from effects. Stevie Ray Vaughan, almost none of his sound came from effects. So to me, they're not super important in the chain of you trying to get a Stevie Ray Vaughan sound. You don't have to obsess over, spending $800 on a vintage Vox V846 wah-wah. You don't have to go back and get a TS 808 you know, the exact version that he used on a record. You don't have to do it, in my opinion. You just have to get an overdrive pedal that gives you a boost, and you have to get a wah-wah that works well with your sound that you like, you know? So those are the main effects that he used was overdrive and a wah-wah. And then Cesar Diaz did say he used an Octavia, Tycho Brahe Octavia, and he also used a fuzz face every now and then, you know, and Cesar Diaz built like a square box fuzz face for Stevie Ray Vaughan. He didn't use it that often, man. You know, I wouldn't, you know, he didn't have the fuzz face, as you can see on his pedal board. He didn't have the fuzz face on here. You know, he didn't use it very often. He didn't use an Octavia very often. He didn't use a delay. He didn't use a univibe. He didn't use a chorus. He didn't use he didn't use any of that stuff. Stevie Ray Vaughan's sound was not from his effects. It was from his guitar through his amplifier. Okay. And the main point of his overdrive pedal was to boost his sound during his solos. And then the wah-wah was used during like Voodoo Child Sight Return, Soul to Soul. And then he used a rotating speaker effect on Cold Shot. That's pretty much it. I mean, so when you're looking to get an effect, you know, get a tube screamer sound, an overdrive sound that you like, you know, this is the earlier version of it, TS-808. Get you a wah-wah pedal that you like, you know, and you know, Stevie Ray could have lived without the wah-wah pedal too, I believe. You know, he didn't use it that often. So, you know, the most important component is your guitar, your pickups, your amplifier, and your technique. These are the most important parts of getting a Stevie Ray Vaughan sound. The effects are entirely secondary, in my opinion. But if you want to get, you know, the Stevie Ray Vaughan effects, just get you an overdrive for your boost, and then get you a nice sounding wah-wah to go with it. And at that point, you'll pretty much have it covered.